to say go live. Okay, I see a bunch of viewers. And
We're
it
live.
looks like we are live now. Make sure
It's
this...
awesome. It sounds like there's a little bit of an echo on someone's side. I'm not sure where that's coming from. As you can imagine, this is our first live stream. So, technical difficulties along the way. It does sound like it's coming from you, Jacob.
An echo?
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense.
Yeah.
I think... Do you guys have your audio on?
I'm wearing earbuds.
No.
If it's coming out of a speaker on your side, that might be why. Oh, I think
we're good.
it's gone.
We're good? Okay.
I think we're good.
No, I think what it is, you know what,
perfect.
I meant to tell you guys, there is a bit of a delay, and I think what you're hearing is the audio from your earbuds from the video, or from the stream.
Okay. Well,
okay.
perfect.
That makes
Well, we're
sense.
live now, which is very exciting. So, for anyone joining us, thank you for joining us on this. As we've mentioned, this is our first live stream, so there will be technical difficulties along the way, but it's a pregame show. So, we're talking about the game. There's still an echo, so apologies to anyone listening. We're talking about the game tonight. Robbie Ray is starting. I think that's the most exciting thing happening in tonight's game. Why, I guess for either you, Jacob or Bryson, why is Robbie Ray starting so important for the Blue Jays? Like, why is this something that people can be excited about?
Well, I think it's just Robbie Ray is a guy that looked great all spring training. He's somebody that he came to the Blue Jays. He worked with Pete Walker. He really started to get his walks per nine down while still keeping his strikeouts per nine up. And he's somebody that had some struggles with his previous team, but he's now come here. He had a few setbacks with injuries, and we were all a little bit worried about that. But he's here. He's ready. The Blue Jays are in some dire need of a starting pitcher that can take them deep into games. And I think that he is just a guy that we've all expected to be very good. And we mentioned on the podcast that was posted yesterday, his spring training was absolutely fantastic. And the Blue Jays really, they're just somebody that, again, need starting pitching. And he is somebody that hopefully will bring them that starting pitching starting tonight.
Absolutely, it is. Robbie Ray is somebody that we've been talking about all spring, all off season. Entering the year is projected at the time was second starter on this team, and he started the year on the injured list. So we know how it's gone so far with the starting pitching. It's been all right. Hasn't been the greatest. We've seen very good performances out of Hyun-Jin Ryu. We've seen good performances out of Steven Matz, and now Robbie Ray's officially back, and it's better than the diesel truck. So that's. I guess that's how it happened. He got pushed out, and Robbie Ray makes his season debut tonight. So this is something that the rotation really needed. It's going to be a big boost for what's been going on.
I see.
Yeah, definitely. And
sorry,
go ahead, Jacob.
Okay, I was going to say, I see Tony writing in the chat because we need him to be able to make a run at the playoffs if we want to make it there. And exactly, again, we said this in the last episode. Robbie Ray, Hyun-Jin Ryu, hopefully Nate Pearson, Steven Matz, these are all guys that we expect to be in the playoff rotation. And with a guy like Robbie Ray, I think even if I think he will be a starter, there's definitely going to be some guys that are not necessarily starters in the playoffs that are part of their starting rotation. But with Robbie Ray, he is a guy, you put Ryu game 1, I think you put Ray game 3, Pearson or whoever they want to put game 2, but I think that Robbie Ray is a solidified game 3 starter, maybe close out a series if, fingers crossed, they get a 2-0 series lead in the division series. But exactly, he's a guy that he's experienced, and he would definitely help them continue with their playoff run.
Yeah, and that's why today is so pivotal, because if Robbie Ray comes out and is who he was in spring training, like we saw the guy who had whatever it was, 18 strikeouts, 5 walks compared to what he led all of baseball in with 45 strikeouts last season. If he can translate those spring training numbers to regular season numbers, kind of like we've seen Steven Matz do, it's a big deal for the Blue Jays, because that's exactly what they need to solidify the rotation. Another thing we're probably going to be watching for in tonight's game is the offense side of things. Obviously, we talked about this on the podcast, so forgive us for repeating something that maybe if you've listened to the podcast as well, which, of course, shout out, you can watch it now on this channel, which I recommend you subscribe. But I as I was saying, the offense, if the Blue Jays, if we look at Saturday as the day that kind of things woke up finally for the Blue Jays, it could be an exciting day today if that continues. But it might not continue. We might see the same sort of offensive woes. We know Rowdy Tellez is in the lineup. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is back in the lineup after being off on the COVID IL. If these guys don't start hitting, maybe we don't see the same type of breakout performance that we saw on Saturday in Saturday's late game. So that's another thing we're looking at to see whether the Blue Jays can continue their hot offense as we saw it on Saturday. Again, this is something the Blue Jays need to get going. We're talking 10 days, 11 days into the season now. It's kind of getting late in terms of getting the offense going. Of course, we don't want to overreact, but it is a time when the Blue Jays have to get something going. So hopefully they can do that against the Yankees, against the team. I don't know if it's going to happen tonight, especially against someone like Garrett Cole. It might be something that we have to wait until tomorrow for with Corey Kluber on the mound, but that's another thing we're watching in this series. In terms of the offense, what are some specific names you guys are looking out for? Some guys in the offense, whether it's 2 or 3 guys, who you are focusing in on seeing, tonight will be pivotal in terms of what are you interested in looking at on the offense from them?
I think we need to definitely look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because keep in mind the Blue Jays have seen Garrett Cole already. This is their second time facing him, so bit of sense of familiarity there. But Guerrero is a guy, as we mentioned on the podcast, his on base percentage is over 500, so he is literally getting on base more times than not. And why not continue that great performance against one of the best pitchers in the league in Garrett Cole? And I think he's a guy, I think we have our eyes on him all season and will have our eyes on him all season. So I'm definitely looking at Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but also I'm predicting it right now. Rowdy Tellez gets his first hit of the game, or first hit of the season rather. I'm thinking he finally gets out of that slump. I really do feel for him because I do like Rowdy Tellez, and I think that he is a starter on this team, and I want to see him bounce back from that and get somewhere to where we've expected him to be, and at least get somewhere close to those 2020 numbers.
And you guys can still hear me?
We can, yes.
Perfect. All right. So for this as well, I got a few names I'm curious about just because first of all, the last game this team played was Saturday, and we know what happened Saturday. It was 15-1, and that was kind of, I guess, a turnaround from what we've been seeing over the past week. Last week, obviously, was very disappointing offensively, and Sunday's game we didn't get to see because it was rained out. So, in terms of the offense as a whole, I'm just a little bit, I guess, curious to see how this team's going to pan out and see if this was kind of just a one game, or like how much am I going to take away from this past Saturday, if that makes sense, going into a long week here after what happened on Saturday. So when that happens, someone like Bo Bichette is someone I'm going to be watching because prior to Saturday, he was struggling, and I want to see if he can maintain that. Rowdy Tellez is another name because obviously the struggles we had a whole, I guess, it was almost a 20-30 minute conversation, our last podcast about him and what's going to happen with him. And we've been mentioning, I guess, scenarios where George Springer returns or, the leash that he has. So I want to see what we see out of Robbie Ray tonight, especially against Garrett Cole. It's going to be a test for sure. Kevin Biggio is someone we've still kind of been, had a little bit of a slow start, but now he's starting to pick it up and going back to what we've seen from him. So I guess I have him written down, but not too concerned or not too anxious to see what we get out of him. Lourdes Gurriel is another one I have circled down. He returns from the COVID IL after experiencing symptoms from the vaccine, and he is somebody that I'm pretty interested to see how he performs this week. And for Lourdes Gurriel Jr. as well, another one who's gotten off to a slow start. And him going on the COVID IL from symptoms or side effects from the vaccine obviously wasn't the greatest thing to happen to him. It just seemed another bump on the road. So I want to see him get comfortable in the lineup and him be consistent at the plate. And, one other guy I guess I'll be excited for is Josh Palacios. He gets another start after what we saw, a very impressive debut on Saturday. Obviously, he got his first hit. He got his first RBI. And he's been someone who's been itching for an opportunity for years. So unfortunately, he's always been just kind of out of opportunities, or just, the odd man out. And in this case, he was 2 back. He was behind Jonathan Davis, who's the team's 4th outfielder right now. But the George Springer injury obviously opened things up, and especially Teoscar Hernandez going on the COVID IL. So Josh Palacios is someone I'm excited to see once again. And those are some guys that I have circled down on this lineup as we head into this series, I guess, overall against the Yankees.
I have a couple things in the chat I just want to read to you guys first. There's William saying, thoughts on playing Kirk more than Jansen given his offense struggles to start the season. It's tough because I do like Danny Jansen defensively, and obviously we've seen him. He's going to catch Hyunjin Ryu, so that's a guaranteed 1 out of 5 starts. And I still do think the Blue Jays plan on keeping Jansen in the lineup as their starting catcher, because you got to also remember Alejandro Kirk, what was it, AA last year I think it was when he got called up, so he's still very inexperienced, and I don't know if I would necessarily throw him into the fire. It could work, but you know, you got to take a calculated risk with that, and I don't know if that would be the best decision for the Blue Jays.
Also, right now, Alejandro Kirk isn't doing any better than Danny Jansen. He's actually doing worse than Danny Jansen. So, I mean, starting him regularly wouldn't make sense at this point, given that he hasn't heated up. If he does heat up, sure, fine, that's wonderful. You know, it gives you a tough decision to make, but it's a good decision to make in the fact that you are having to choose between good defense, good offense. It's more of a choice than what it is right now, because Alejandro Kirk threw 12 plate appearances, 11 at-bats, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, but he doesn't have any hits yet. So not really a decision there when Alejandro Kirk isn't hitting. Again, looking forward to tonight. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing him, you know, kicking up a notch offensively, but that's someone that I don't think that's a decision the Blue Jays are making yet, just because he hasn't gotten things going offensively. Maybe they make it down the line, but it's not something they're probably considering right now just because of the state of the offense.
Yeah, it's been something that I've always been wondering throughout this entire offseason is how long is the leash on Danny Jansen this year? And, you know, a lot of people prefer Alejandro Kirk, but Mark, you mentioned it too. Alejandro Kirk hasn't been hitting that much anyway to begin with. So that's someone who I guess isn't helping it, or, you know, helping it for his sake. I know it's early. We've only just over a weekend now. So I do see a scenario, though, if Alejandro Kirk starts to heat up and Danny Jansen starts to struggle or continues to struggle, where we see kind of more of a even playing field between the two. But of course, Danny Jansen, he's definitely going to be starting a decent amount. We know that he has a great relationship with Hyunjin Ryu. He likes to catch, or Hyunjin Ryu likes when Danny Jansen catches him. So I don't know how much of a starter Kirk would be over Jansen, but I do think it could get to a point where they are almost rotating at certain points, or Kirk may have a slight edge in terms of starting over Jansen, because Jansen himself, he hasn't helped his case whatsoever. He's another one who's looked really uncomfortable at the plate to start the year, and he's somebody that they need, or that, you know, his addition to start contributing would be a massive boost to this lineup. But unfortunately, we're not seeing it from him. And I don't, you know, even with Kirk as well, that whole position as a whole, we're still waiting on. But a lot of people have more faith in Alejandro Kirk to get going sooner. Either way, you know, for this team to be as best as they can, you need both of them to start going regardless. I mean, soon, right? You don't want it to be continuing to go on like this. And for a team who started off slow offensively, you're waiting for that boost, and that's why one of the two, it's got to get going soon. But for Alejandro Kirk, I do see a scenario where there's a chance at some point this year where he could be almost rotating starts and not being that, you know, backup. If in terms of wording, I think he could be somebody who flip-flops with Jansen quite a bit.
I think, honestly, going into this season, I think this was a bit of a question mark that all of us had in the back of our minds, saying, when it comes to Danny Jansen, look, I like him defensively, but he's at the point in his career now where you kind of need to get things going offensively, and I don't necessarily think it's enough to be a good defensive catcher. Baseball's a two-way sport, and you know, you as an offensive team have an equal opportunity to score runs as when compared to your opponents. So you need to be equally as good offensively at a minimum in order to justify staying on the major league roster. And it's just, when it comes to Jansen, I think he really, I wouldn't say he's on a short leash anymore, or not yet at least, but I do predict that eventually the Blue Jays will say, okay, we like you, but we do need you to get things going offensively, because the team as a whole needs the offensive help, whether it comes from him, Teoscar Hernandez when he comes back, Gurriel, Biggio, any of these guys. And I'm just reading, before you guys go, I'm just reading a couple things in the chat. Look is asking, Tellez or Biggio, mental or mechanical? So are there struggles, issues with what they're doing on the field, or is this more in their head? And I'm not sure about Biggio. I will say it is a little bit mechanical, actually. I'll retract that. I think with Biggio, we've seen him take a much more aggressive plate appearance or plate approach, and he's really trying to get at those early pitches, and it didn't work for him earlier in the season. For Tellez, I'm going to go on and say that it's actually mental, because hear me out. Rowdy Tellez is their primary DH, or has been their primary DH all season long. And when you're the designated hitter, you basically sit on the bench until it's your turn to bat. So to me, I think one of the things wrong with Tellez's game right now is maybe he's just not into the games enough. He's just sitting on the bench, and he's not able to get involved with the game. And you look at a guy like Jordan Romano, he's always into the game, especially when he knows he's about to pitch. Obviously, completely different positions, but I think that it might be a case of Rowdy Tellez just needs to get into the game more. Maybe that's play in the field. That'll restrict where Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or any of the other players they have can play, but I think Tellez does need to try and get into the field a little bit more to kind of get into the game more often.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the question from Riley, how long until Rowdy Tellez is sent down, is an interesting one. We were talking about it on the podcast, but I think the Blue Jays wait until, at the very least, until George Springer comes back, assuming there's no more setbacks. If Springer comes back, let's say a week from today, that's probably a bit optimistic, but a week from today, and Rowdy Tellez still hasn't gotten things going, even if he has a couple hits, right, he's hitting like 100, 150, I think at that point the Blue Jays might decide to send him down, go to the alternate training site, work on some things, get your rhythm back, and then come back to the majors. So I'd say 1 week minimum. I think it'll probably be longer than that. I think once he gets going, the Blue Jays will say, okay, we'll give you a little bit more time. So that's where I put his kind of ETA at, I guess, for going back to the minors.
Yeah, it's definitely going to depend on George Springer. And the one thing we know that's new with George Springer is that he's fully recovered from the oblique injury, from what we know of, or at least what Charlie Montoyo has been saying. And now we're just waiting on his quad, which is the new setback that he went through. So I don't see any move prior to that where he goes down for somebody already at the training site. It's going to be, I agree with you, Mark, it's going to be when George Springer's healthy. And that's when they're going to have to make a corresponding move. And at the worst case, if Rowdy Tellez continues to struggle, he could be the odd man out, or he could be the guy that has to go down for a stint in order to fix whatever has been going on with him. And going back to your question, Jacob, I can make the argument too myself, even with Biggio, as much as that's no longer a concern, or even compared to Rowdy Tellez, it's not a concern at all, or at least it's at a lower level of concern, I should say properly, is that, with Biggio, we already discussed it as well. Mark, you brought it up, I think that was the very first weekend that the season started, of how he wanted to be more aggressive at the plate. He wanted to hit more. And that's why I can make the argument that that's more mental for Cavan Biggio because of that. Because we know the mechanics are there. And he's been making good contact at times this season. He's already hit a few home runs. And for Rowdy Tellez, I think that could be both. I do think mechanical is a problem with what's been going on with him. He just seems to be overly aggressive. He just doesn't seem comfortable at all. He's making weak contact. And quite frankly, he hasn't hit any solid contact yet. And of course, it's definitely getting to his head as well. So that's why for Rowdy Tellez, I'm making the case that it's both mechanical and mental. And for Cavan Biggio, I think that little, couple day slump he was in was more just in his head because of the approach he wanted to do, because he wanted to change his approach. And just because he changed his approach doesn't mean that he has mechanical issues with his actual swing. So that's why I look at it in a different way from Rowdy Tellez. I think Rowdy Tellez has pretty much a little bit of everything going on right now. And you want to see Rowdy Tellez succeed. You don't want to see him go down to the alternate site when George Springer's back. We've gone through this a few times with Rowdy Tellez. 2019, I mentioned as well in the podcast a couple days ago. Check it out if you haven't listened to it yet or watched it yet. Is that we've already gone through this with Rowdy Tellez, where he struggled, he went down, he came back up. He seemed to be a better hitter, but he just still didn't seem comfortable at all. So we know he can hit in AAA because the numbers are there to prove it. His numbers in Buffalo overall are there. It's just that the adjustment and being consistent at the MLB level is what he lacks. And that is why, going back to the 2020 season, I've never been fully on board of calling him a legit MLB player, which is for those reasons alone, because I need to see it at the MLB level consistently over 162 games, and we still haven't seen that yet. We're a weekend now, just over a weekend now, and the struggles continue to be there for Rowdy Tellez. And it seems to be a similar path as what we saw from him in 2019. So, you hope he can get through this now, and you hope he can avoid some sort of stint in the minor leagues if the time comes or if he avoids an alternate site demotion, because you want to see him stay at this lineup. Because going back to last year when he was on, he was a massive piece of this lineup, and he still will be once he can figure things out. So for Rowdy Tellez, he just has to calm down and I guess slow down and kind of reassess of what is going on with him and how he wants to approach things, because it's both mechanical and both in his head, I think, right now for Rowdy Tellez.
I'm just seeing something in the chat. Riley asks, do you think Odor will try anything tonight, given that he has recently been traded to the Yankees? If he does, he better watch out. I'll say that. I don't think this new group of Blue Jays will take anything. I think that's an interesting question. I like that one. And then Liam asks, which actually interesting. We talked about this yesterday. How big of a lead do you think we should have, or how big of a lead do you think we should have to let Rourke come in out of the pen? I don't think he is coming, or I don't think that he should be in the bullpen. I said this yesterday on the podcast. I want the Blue Jays to eat his contract, and I do not want him pitching for this Blue Jays team, because he hasn't proven to me over the last season, or I guess you can say last year, and so far he has just not proven to me that he is good enough to pitch in meaningful games. So I guess if I had to pick a number, Riley, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say 5, but again, I still don't think that Tanner Roark is or should be pitching out of the bullpen or pitching at all for the Blue Jays.
I know we've been over this, so I don't want to relitigate it, because you can go listen to the podcast if you really want to hear our opinions on this. But I think 5 to 6 is probably right. I think the Blue Jays are going to be very conservative in how they use him at first while they test the waters. Maybe he gets into tonight's game, and maybe he never pitches when there's a lead. Maybe he only pitches when the Blue Jays are down, right, when it's a blowout game and they need to eat innings. Maybe that's where he gets into the game. So I think they're going to be very conservative to start the season. And on Rougned Odor, I honestly completely blanked. I know everyone's been talking about it, but I completely forgot that these New York Yankees are now plus Rougned Odor instead of, as we saw them, just like 5 days ago, without Rougned Odor. So it's going to be very exciting to see how that shakes out. But I don't see anything happening. There's not a single Blue Jay on this team that was on the team in 2016. So I don't really see there being any bad blood there. I think it's just gonna, things are gonna shake out normally. And of course, we hate Rougned Odor, which everyone knows. I don't think that's a surprise one.
Yeah, Rougned Odor, I actually kind of forgot for a couple of days he was on the Yankees, but when I'm looking at the lineup card right now, he is batting 7th at second base. So I did see a picture of him actually.
I was going to mention
check
that.
it out if you haven't seen it. Just because obviously the Yankees have the no facial hair rule, so he had to shave off everything on his face, and he looked pretty interesting. It's just something that none of us are obviously used to, going back to his entire career with Texas. So he won't. There's no way anything happens, but I mean, would I like to see him try something to make him look even more stupid? Absolutely. So, he's just forever will be somebody who's one of the most hated players in Blue Jays history, or in terms of our fan base, and rightfully so. But we still own them, so it's okay. Especially that franchise still hasn't won a World Series. So I'll leave it there. You probably understand how I feel about that organization. But going back to your Aurora question, we actually did have a long conversation, as Mark mentioned on our podcast a couple of days ago, and I actually got more time to reflect about it and think about it. And I was one that was more in favor of him doing this. Jacob, I know you said that you wanted him to get released, and I thought try and get as much as you can out of him and try this route of him in the bullpen, and I'm all for that. But for Tanner Roark, I even said like this past Saturday would have been a perfect opportunity for him to come in. It's just, I would say anything at 4 runs or more is when he starts to come in, and be very careful in terms of increasing his workload or increasing, I guess, the situations that he comes in at. But overall, I don't see this lasting too much. I don't see a long responsibility or a long role for him in this bullpen at all. I thought about it. I've been thinking about it today as well. I don't see much of a future there, but I think this is kind of another last minute attempt. Try and get whatever you can and salvage whatever you can. And if it doesn't work out, I think he'll be off the roster come a few months. I do, but I don't see much more of a future with him. But to start things off, I see him coming in a very low leverage situations, long middle open, he'll be where they innings to Eaton, wants out, but just I don't think anybody's wants that stuff, including myself. Just if there's a chance out, he could spot start. Don't want to see it as Mark check it out as well. Mark say he wanted to see at least one more of him, but I'll leave that for you to go back and watch. And other than Mark, I think every other Blue Jay fan does not want to see him start one more time.
Yeah, well, I think we'll leave it there. It is currently 6:56 p.m., so the Blue Jays are about to begin their game against the New York Yankees. Garrett Cole versus Robbie Ray. Thank you to everybody for joining. This was the first of hopefully many streams on this YouTube channel. We do apologize for the technical difficulties. This was, as you can see, we are rookies at this, but we got this going, and it was a lot of fun. It's as I said in the podcast yesterday, it's awesome to be able to talk to people in a live setting, and it's a great experience. So if you're new, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're going to be posting podcasts every week, also live streams, and maybe some content throughout the week. I think it's going to be a very fun thing. Also, be sure to turn on post notifications, as I said, because we're going to be going live a lot. And thank you. And again, let's go Blue Jays. They are playing in a couple more minutes.